Hello, I'm Dan.
And I'm Simon.
And this is the Wikicast, a podcast where Wikipedia takes us to a random article and we talk about what we find. Simon, what are we talking about this week?
This week, Daniel, we're talking about Father Christmas.
No way.
I know, what are the odds?
What are the odds? That's insane.
I could probably tell you the odds, actually. How many articles are there in English Wikipedia? That's a genuine question. I don't know. Do you want to guess? Guess how many articles there are on Wikipedia? In English.
God, I don't know. Like a trillion?
Okay, you're a little bit off. A trillion articles.
Yeah, well, there's lots of things.
That's so many. No, it's about
Okay,
6.5 million articles.
6.5 million? That's it?
I mean, that's still, when you think about, apparently there are 644 words per article on average.
That seems like a very, very small number.
I don't know, I think that's a pretty big number.
I thought it would be like hundreds of millions at least.
I mean, I don't know. Having that episode chat with Annie from Depths of Wikipedia sort of made me realise that actually, like, it's not the simplest thing to get a Wikipedia article. Like, there are actually some criteria that you have to meet. And
sure,
I suppose that really narrows the field down. It's not that you can have we're not Walt Whitman. We're not going to have a wiki about every single blade of grass.
No, but sort of facts and actual things, as opposed to something that justifies having a page by virtue of like public interest, popularity, or something. I mean, there's lots of things that should just have a page by virtue of existing.
Yes, I suppose.
And I thought that number would be larger than, what was it, 6 million?
6.5 million. So we could say that the odds of us randomising onto Father Christmas are about 1 in 6.5 million.
Wow. And interestingly, there are 6.5 million variations of snowflake, famously.
According to Twitter.
So we've got a nice sort of Christmas circle there.
Well, it's a Christmas miracle,
isn't it?
This is and we should. I realise that this is the classic thing that podcasters do, but we sort of accidentally went through a bit of a stretch where we hadn't recorded an episode for a while. I'm not actually quite sure how. I think it was just lots of things on top of each other. We were both just quite busy. I was travelling quite a lot, and then the recent thing that happened that took up all of my spare time was the Jingle Jam.
Yes, of course.
Which has just finished as of at the time of recording.
Yeah.
So yeah, we both had a lot on, so I do apologise, but we've come back with a Christmas special. I'm recording it whilst I'm quite ill, but this is the last chance that we have to get something in the can. So we're here for you. We're here providing an hour of nontent for your Christmassy ears.
Festive nontent for all of you lovely readers.
Have you put your tree up yet, Dan?
Well, this is the first year where I haven't put a tree up. Because
what?
I've been sort of dashing around.
Prancing around?
Through December. Like yes, I've always. Like a bit of a madman. And then I'm meant to be leaving for London on the 19th. And I sort of just started thinking, well, actually, there's quite a bit to do. I had some stuff going on with the house and it would have been a bit of a pain. And for the places that I'll be going from the 19th until New Year, I imagine I'm going to encounter plenty of Christmas trees, so I don't need to put my own up,
Yeah, that's fair.
It does feel a bit odd. I love putting the tree up and decorating it and, mulled wine and music, and that's great. But I just haven't had time this year, which is a bit sad, but... What about you? Have you put yours up?
Yeah, well, we had quite an early start to Christmas. So we have our friendship group from people that I've been to school with, basically. We like to have a kind of Christmas meal as a group every year. And one of us was expecting a baby and, in fact, has just become parents the other day. And so we moved the meal up. It was on the 2nd of December. So really early to have a Christmas meal. But it meant that we were like, well, we're hosting here. So let's put the tree up. Let's put some decorations up, and it just meant that the Christmas season started way earlier than normal.
Gosh.
Like when I was a kid, we always used to put the tree up on the last day of school. That was like the threshold event.
Yeah.
Which was what, I don't know, the 20th of December or something, like quite close to Christmas in retrospect. But yeah, so ours has been up. I've been listening to Christmassy music quite a lot. I've got my actually good classical Christmas music playlist that I've been listening to a whole bunch.
Very good.
And you've been doing, of course, some Christmassy singing.
Yeah, quite a lot of Christmassy singing, actually.
It's arguably peak season for a choral singer.
Yes, it's very, very busy. You always sort of attract the response of people sort of saying, "Oh, great! So, what are your plans for Christmas?" Yeah, I'm finishing my I'm taking holiday from work on the 15th, and then I'm free until New Year. Can't wait. Blah blah blah. And then you've got sort of sacred church musicians just sort of like sitting back quietly, listening to this conversation, being like, yeah, cool. I've got midnight mass on the 24th, but yeah, that's great.
And about 4 messiahs, 9 lessons and carol services.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very frantic, busy time of year for church music, but also a really lovely one, you know.
Yeah.
I've got, in fact, immediately after this podcast, I need to race off to Buckfast to go and sing at a carol service.
Are you sick of it yet? Genuine question, are you sick of it?
I'm sick of some things. If I have to sing Hark the Herald Angels Sing one more time, I'll blow my top, I think. But, you know.
I was fully expecting you to be like something by Rutter. I don't know, what's a famous Rutter piece that everyone gets sick of?
Shepherd's Pipe Carol.
Oh, and I mean this in the traditional sense, the gayest of all carols. Like it's just so light and breezy.
It really is. I mean, we were talking about Rutter the other day and sort of saying how, you know, like for the most part, he is an utterly phenomenal composer and writes some incredible stuff. And as far as sort of writing for voices, and I think I'm going to wow myself here by remembering the word. I believe it's called parsimonious.
Ooh.
Which is when you're writing with sort of voice leading in mind for choral music, such that the melodic line of an individual voice part doesn't move too much. You know, it's very sort of ergonomic in that sense.
Right. Because the classic counter example would be like an alto line that's just spotting all over the place to fill in the gap in the chord.
Yeah, sure. Or trying to do something by, like, I don't know, Poulenc, you know, which I'm also having to do because we've got some music on. I'm singing Eucharist on Sunday morning. But that should be quite jolly. But yeah, I think for the most part, no, I don't really get sick of stuff. I mean, I've done quite a few Shepherd's Pipe carols so far this Christmas, and that does great ever so slightly. But to be honest, it's more the congregational carols, because you always get to the end of a service, and they save some of the big carols to the end, and just hearing the organ strike up, "O come all you faithful," or "Hark the Herald Angels Sing," and know you've got to sort of scream through 3 or 4 verses of this before you can have a mulled wine and go to the pub.
Yeah.
It does get a bit...
It's just like,
because it's just unrelenting. I mean, if you're a member of the congregation, you're coming and then that's your service done. That's quite nice.
Yeah.
Because you might not be singing it at any other point. But when you're a choral singer and, you know, you're probably going to be singing it at least 30 times over the season, it gets a bit much.
And they are some big sings. I feel like that's something that is overlooked, as you say, when it's just the one time in the year that people will sing that carol. But if you are doing it 10, 20 times, it's a bloody lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, we're here to talk about Father Christmas, Dan, of course. And I mean, what can you say? What can you say about old Saint Nick? Or well, actually, there is a difference, isn't there? There is actually like they blur Santa Claus, Father Christmas, Saint Nicholas, Sinterklaas, and general other nationalities versions. But they are actually distinct things, I suppose.
Absolutely. I mean, certainly the St. Nicholas is entirely distinct. And in fact, at my final concert with the Chagford Singers, which was on the 11th of December, which went very, very well. I'm very pleased and proud of them, and I will miss them terribly because that was I'm sort of stepping down as director. We did the Haydn Missa Sancti Nicholai, the Mass of St. Nicholas.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, it's Christmas, innit? See what we did there? Very clever. He was... As we probably all know, Simon, an early Christian bishop of Greek descent.
Yes.
From the maritime city of Myra in Asia Minor. He was also known as Nicholas the Wonder Worker, which I think is a better title.
Why don't we call him that?
Nicholas the Wonder Worker.
Jolly Nicholas the Wonder Worker. It sounds like something in Civ. It might allow you to rush the pyramids or something.
Yeah. St. Nicholas is the patron saint of sailors, merchants, archers, repentant thieves, children, brewers, pawnbrokers, unmarried people, and students in various cities across and countries across Europe.
Whereas Father Christmas is the traditional English name for the personification of Christmas. So there is a slight technical difference. Although now known as a Christmas gift bringer, he was originally part of a much older and unrelated English folkloric tradition, with the modern figure developing in the late Victorian period. I have to admit, I didn't know that.
At some point, can we please talk about Sinterklaas?
Yes. Well, Sinterklaas. I ended up doing a tiny bit of research for Sinterklaas for the University Challenge quiz that I wrote because he was the answer to one of the questions. I'm sure we'll talk about that process a bit actually because that was an interesting experience. But I was going to say, just to fill in a bit more detail from the Father Christmas wiki, English personifications of Christmas were first recorded in the 15th century, with Father Christmas himself first appearing in the mid 17th century in the aftermath of the English Civil War. The Puritan, I'm sure this is more widely known, the Puritan-controlled English government had legislated to abolish Christmas, considering it papist, and outlawed its traditional customs. So this was, oh gosh, I think it was, when was Charles I executed? It was like 1652 or something like that.
Sounds convincing.
When was the Commonwealth? It was approximately then.
1649?
That, well, I could believe it. I'd buy that for $1. Well, it is the Commonwealth, isn't it? That name for that period of history, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, Commonwealth of England, 1649 to 1660. So there was this 11-year period where you could not celebrate Christmas in the UK because of it was too papist, it was too Catholic. However, royalist political pamphleteers linking the old traditions with their cause adopted Father Christmas as the symbol of the good old days of feasting and good cheer. Following the Restoration in 1660, Father Christmas's profile declined and his character was maintained during the 18th and 19th century by the Christmas folk plays, later known as mummers' plays. Which is interesting. I didn't know that. I've been to a mummers' play. Have you?
No.
So mummers' plays, and I don't know if it's maybe it's more of a West Country thing. Maybe not. I mean, the picture on the wiki for Mama's Play is in St Albans, so apparently not. It's basically it's a kind of quasi pantomime, I suppose. I went to one in a local pub where it's basically a bunch of actors who all dress up in the sort of very stereotypical roles like St George, Dragon, Father Christmas, all these kind of things. And then there's a sort of a, I don't know, 30-minute to an hour-long performance, I suppose, where it's all like kind of get the audience involved, and I think there's singing that happens normally throughout it. But yeah, very strange experience.
So is it sort of panto-esque?
Yeah, it's
in terms of the audience involvement, but not necessarily the theatrical style.
Yeah, I think it's very much like sort of you could view it as a precursor to pantomime, which is very much a Victorian kind of vibe.
Right.
And I have no idea about the history of pantomime, but I would guess
Pre-tomime.
Yes, precisely. So yes, but that's interesting that it took part in the Mummers' Play. But I didn't know that it was linked to the Restoration. It was sort of a symbol co-opted, well, not co-opted, but used at least by the Royalists. That's very interesting. Whereas, of course, the modern version is synonymous with Santa Claus, which arrived in England in the 1850s, and that I believe is where Sinterklaas comes into it.
Which is just, Sinterklaas, phenomenal in and of itself. Or rather in and of themselves. My favourite part of when I lived in the Netherlands and we were sort of discovering the whole Sinterklaas, Zwarte Piet thing was not only realising that we sort of inadvertently get 2 Christmases, because there's an evening of gift giving that comes from Zwarte Piet, and then also like Christmas Eve proper, but also all of the Dutch national television broadcasting his arrival and his travel through the country. Because how does he arrive in the Netherlands, Simon?
Oh, doesn't he? He comes from Spain?
He does. And how does he arrive? What does he travel on from Spain? It's quite a specific thing.
Does he ride a horse?
He rides a horse through the Netherlands, but you'll struggle he comes via the sea.
Flu network?
No, it's a steamboat.
That's so specific.
Yeah.
All aboard the SS Sinterklaas. Amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. The festivities traditional begin each year in mid-November, the first Saturday after the 11th of November, when Sinterklaas arrives by a steamboat at a designated seaside town, supposedly from Spain. In the Netherlands, this takes place in a different port each year, whereas in Belgium, it always takes place in the city of Antwerp. The steamboat anchors, then Sinterklaas disembarks and parades through the streets on his horse, welcomed by children cheering and singing traditional Sinterklaas songs, which I remember having to sing when he would come and visit the school.
Having to sing, you bloody loved it.
And you get his Zwarte Piet assistants throw candy and small round gingerbread-like cookies, pepernoten, which are delicious, into the crowd. The event is broadcast live on national television in the Netherlands and Belgium. It's crazy. It really is bonkers.
Like just sort of thinking about the steamboat point again, isn't that the only reason that stands out to us is because most of the traditions, sort of long-standing folklore traditions that we have, predate the Industrial Revolution in one form or another. And so it's only unusual for us to hear steamship or steamboat and think, wait a minute, what? Whereas presumably, in 200 years' time or whatever, you're going to have some folklore about somebody who arrives by a 747, or I don't know, deep internet folklore from the early days of, like, I don't know. It's said that this holiday began when two people met on Bebo, or whatever. I don't know. I kind of wanted to fast forward 200 years into the future just to see what the folklore is going to be like, and what part of modern day is considered, ooh, isn't that lovely and old fashioned.
Yes, yeah. The only other person I feel like that we should also probably mention as far as sort of regal figures at this time of year is obviously Good King Wenceslas.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Because everyone sort of forgets about him. I mean, granted, he was sort of a Bohemian king, right? Which is Czech Republic, or what was the Czech Republic?
Bohemia? No, isn't it German? Oh, this is where I'm going to look very stupid. The westernmost and largest historical region of the Czech Republic. I defer to you, sir. Very well. Very good.
Well, the only reason I know is because we used to have to do quite a bit of research about Good King Wenceslas, and indeed the Feast of Stephen, which we hear in the carol, simply because when I was a choral scholar at Exeter Cathedral, our final service was we used to have to sing the Eucharist on the morning of the 26th of December, the Feast of Stephen, because it was given for the sort of vergers and sides people and things of Exeter Cathedral. And it was the most hated Eucharist service of the year because everyone was horrifically hungover and nobody wanted to do the singing at all. And it was so bleak, and everyone sort of like staggering into the vestry to rehearse. We likely wouldn't even rehearse. We'd get there about 10 to 10 for a 10 o'clock service and like scream through Bird 5, and that's it.
Exeter Cathedral Choir is a highly professional choir in the southwest of England. Wow.
Yeah, gosh, the Feast of Stephen is forever tainted in my mind of having to get up after, feeling really, really awfully hungover. Or, as was learned after my first year, you just don't stop drinking through the night so that you can get up and still feel merry in the morning and then crash hard in the evening of the 26th.
The merriness is the important thing. Like, let's not make any mistakes here. Whilst you were talking, I was just looking at the wiki for Sinterklaas. Little interesting note here. During the German occupation of the Netherlands, many of the traditional Sinterklaas rhymes were rewritten to reflect current events. The RAF was often celebrated. In 1941, for instance, the RAF dropped boxes of candy over the occupied Netherlands. And there's a rewrite of a poem here, which the original version is Sinterklaas, little capon, throw something in my little shoe, throw something in my little boot, thank you, dear Sinterklaas. There's a World War II version, which is RAF, little capon, throw something in my little shoe, throw bombs at the Krauts, but scatter candy in Holland.
Wow.
That I don't, again, just sort of interesting when you hear kind of folklore to be rewritten to be much more modern. That's really interesting.
I had no idea that the RAF dropped boxes of like sweets and things over. Wow.
God, can you imagine if you f***ed up the payload on that? You're just like, wait,
God.
that was meant to be the candy route? Oh God.
Yeah.
No one talk about this. No, we saw nothing.
Yeah. Gosh.
Oh dear.
It gives a whole other meaning to Operation Mincemeat. They're not dropping mince pies.
Oh, that's one of your best. Yeah.
It's dangerous, isn't it?
Oh my God. Yes. Fantastic. We can stop the episode now. Everyone's got their mandated one laugh out of it.
God, people thought that Tiny Tim with his little set of crutches was bleak. I mean, just seeing like bits of disembodied child while people sing carols it's pretty dark, isn't it?
Jesus Christ. Oh, he's born. Oh, good God. I can't breathe. You're doing this to me, Dan, when I can barely breathe anyway.
I apologise. I'm very sorry.
Oh, good grief. Well, so I'm just looking at my waveform. I'm so sorry, Fergus. My waveform's an absolute mess for the past few minutes.
Shall we try and sort of restore a degree of decorum and perhaps move on to Choral Piece of the Week and Critics' Corner?
Yes, we've got some rich pickings, I imagine, for the next two sections. Over to you, Dan.
Absolutely.
What's your Choral Piece of the Week?
And this will be my Piece of the Week. Drum roll, please. So, my choral piece of the week is a very, very late discovery. I was roped in to sing at the university carol services down here in Exeter because Michael needed a few more tenors. And they were singing a piece that was completely new to me, but I think is super, absolutely super. It's composed by Cecilia McDowell, who is a seriously prolific contemporary female composer, and the piece is called Of a Rose.
Oh, yeah, I've never heard of that.
It's great. It's really, really good. It's, how to describe it? It's sort of old English text. It's quite fast. It's quite sort of cheeky at points. It's just really fun and sort of in the sort of category of that Wishart Alleluia. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Alleluia.
That's the one, yeah. It's sort of in that, it's that sort of ilk.
Ah.
But it's absolutely brilliant. So yeah, Cecilia McDowell, Of a Rose, is my Christmas choral piece of the week. It's really excellent, and I highly recommend you have a listen to it. There is an album that you can listen to it on. I think it's the 16 album Carol of the Bells,
right,
which is a really brilliant choral Christmas album. But you'll be able to find other recordings, I'm sure, but that one is particularly fine. Of a Rose.
I shall put a link in the show notes to that. I'm curious to listen to that one. That's entirely new to me.
I think you'll like it a lot.
Whilst we're still in this section, and this will be relevant, I guested on a podcast recently, which, if you like this section of the podcast, you will enjoy. It's called Cacophony, by a guy called Steve Thomas, who I bumped into at New Scientist Live in London. What it is it's every episode is sort of, 10 to 15 minutes perhaps of the host Steve talking to a guest about a favorite piece of music of theirs. So just looking through the recent episodes, we've got the Clara Schumann piano trio, the Mozart Divertimento, or Webern. Like it's very wide ranging. But I came on as a guest to talk about The Path of Miracles by J.B. Talbot.
Oh, cool.
Because I literally take any opportunity to talk about The Path of Miracles. It is an absolutely astonishing piece of music. And to actually be given the time to be like, here, talk about what's your favourite piece in this, your favourite part in this movement. And just to be like, right, let me give you the setup. And yeah, really, really enjoy it. So if you like Dan's Choral Piece of the Week as a section, highly, highly recommend Cacophony. I'll leave a link to that in the show notes as well. And with that, we're in Critics' Corner, Dan, and it has been a while since we've done one of these episodes, so I have no doubt that we have lots to talk about. What have you been enjoying recently?
Well, I suppose the most pressing thing is that I went to the cinema yesterday.
You're joking. A building where they still show films?
Yes, I went to a moving picture house to go and take in one of the new pictures from...
There was a newsreel about everything that's happening out in Nam.
Yeah. Yes, and I went to a 3D screening of Avatar Dos.
Now, what did you think?
Well, I was talking to my partner about this. Like, trying is the operative word. I was trying to talk to my partner about this last night.
Sounded like a Murloc. She couldn't make head nor tails of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did you think of the film, Dan?
A festive Murloc, though. That's fine. I think that when discussing something like Avatar, i.e. like the first one or the second one, from a point of film criticism, it's almost a different kettle of fish entirely as far as film criticism goes, because I think people go into seeing it knowing full well that it's not going to be this incredible sort of genre-defining, groundbreaking, genius piece of narrative film, right?
Well, I feel like you could say that about a lot of James Cameron films, to be fair, in that they're not necessarily pushing the envelope, but they're very, very good examples of what they're trying to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think what people are really wanting out of his films, and I think you're right to sort of broaden it to his whole sort of filmography, is that you're going for an experience and you're going for a spectacle. Yeah,
spectacle I think is the key word.
Yeah, and as far as an experience and spectacle goes, I mean, it looks incredible. It really does just make you go, my goodness, the things they can do now are amazing. Bearing in mind, like...
the things they can do with computers now.
Yeah, I mean, literally. Avatar came out when? In like 2009?
2008? Ooh.
Something
I remember
like,
seeing it with my
close.
first girlfriend. So it was about then, yeah.
Yeah, and so we've waited over a decade for the next film. And as far as the first film, having seen it, and people coming out and going, wow, golly, doesn't it look good? and then going and seeing the second one, I mean, the visuals do not disappoint, and they are even better than the first.
Yeah.
It really is extraordinary.
How much did the 3D add to the visuals?
Well, see, this is it. I personally don't get on board with 3D films at all. I really don't see the point. And I thought, well, you know what? For something like Avatar, and indeed Avatar: The Way of Water, the sequel, those films are sort of made for 3D.
Yeah.
Especially if you've got somebody like James Cameron at the helm. That being said, as much as there were moments where the 3D did really make me feel like I was looking into a box rather than a screen, and it's awfully clever, throughout the very long runtime of the film, which is 3 hours and 12 minutes.
What? I had no idea it was that long.
Which is insanely long, and it does not need to be that long at all. I kept thinking, gosh, I'd really like to see this in 2D because I hate how the image is darkened in 3D. Not to the point where you're really squinting, but all you need to do is quickly sort of take your 3D glasses off and look at the picture and go, wow, that looks so much more lush and brilliant and and vibrant.
Yeah.
And that's what I think Avatar needs.
Yeah, that's the point, arguably. Yes, I could agree with that.
So on the whole, I would probably give it, like, I don't know. This is the thing. So when I'm criticizing it, I'm conscious of not wanting to try and sort of hold it to like other film standards, because I think that's sort of missing the point of why you go to the film. You're not going to, so like, as far as an Avatar film goes, as far as a visual spectacle and experience in the cinema in 3D, whether you like it or not, I'm sure he'd probably say the same as 2D because you're still watching the same sort of picture. I'd probably give it like, I don't know, 3.8.
3 point, very specific. Okay.
Something in that region. It was perfectly, I had a very jolly time watching it. One thing I would say is that I think the themes that they touch on in this film, which are akin to the first, I think are more developed, more serious, and infinitely more complex, and that carries through to character arcs and the new characters you meet in this film. I think it's emotionally quite a bit more hard-hitting than the second.
I know James Cameron has said in interviews that this was basically, he wanted to use this as the biggest platform possible for conservation issues. He basically realized that in order to have the maximum impact on trying to, it's a very cliche thing to say, but, try to save the planet, his way of doing that is to make a film that will be seen by 1 billion people. And so I'm guessing that the environmental theme was sort of front and center again. Yeah. But the characters were definitely the weakest part of the characters, and the fact that the MacGuffin was literally called unobtainium was the weakest part of the first film.
Yeah.
Because I had to admit, thinking back, it's one of these films that I can't honestly say I've thought about very much since I watched it, despite the fact that it's one of the biggest films ever made and that kind of thing. Like, I remember at the time thinking that the way they treated the villains was a little surprising for a film of that size, in that it was actually a little bit nuanced and anti-American in a way that you don't typically see in, big blockbusters like that. So who were the villains? Because are they humans again in this one?
Yes. But interestingly, there's something different. I'm conscious not to spoil it.
Yeah, okay, don't spoil it for me or all the listeners at home. Sorry, readers at home.
But to all intents and purposes, yeah, it's humans being
humans.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
But it's good. Like, it was good. I enjoyed it, and I think I will enjoy it even more seeing it in 2D. So one thing I would say, if I was going to give any advice, if you're thinking of seeing it, personally, if you, like me, are quite seriously on the fence about seeing a feature film in 3 dimensions, just stick to the 2. You'll have a better time.
Okay.
And I think also, yes, it's a long film, but if any kind of film can justify that length, it's Avatar, because people are going for the visual experience, right? And they've waited over 10 years to see this thing. So a lot of people want to go in and be in there for as long as they can and soak up as much as they can. Yeah. And I think James Cameron is acutely aware of that. So I don't think it justifies the length, but it perhaps explains it.
He doesn't, at no point does he hurry you along to the exits. He's like, people have waited in line for a long time for this ticket.
Yes.
Ah, well, interesting. I will check it out. I have to admit, I have been. It's sort of been on my radar in a way that honestly films just haven't this year.
Sure.
Like, I'm not sure if we're in that post-COVID slump in terms of there was nothing really being made for a while still. But yeah, nothing has really interested me in terms of films recently. I know next year we've got Barbie to look forward to, which our friend Hugo, shout out Hugo, is going to be. What was the? I can't remember the exact phrase that he said the other day, but I think it was going to be certified Kino.
Yes, yeah, something like that.
And
I saw the
Oppenheimer,
trailer for that actually there was a brief trailer for it in the cinema,
Oh yeah.
and there was a moment of sort of, oh, what's his name? Who is it playing Ken? I can't remember his name.
Oh, Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling, sort of in a big sparkly jacket doing a little spin, and I was like, oh yeah, we've got to go and see this. This is great.
That's me. It's finally good to get some Dan representation on screen.
It was. It looks very funny.
But it's the same coming out the same day as Oppenheimer, which I'm personally looking forward to because that's the Chris Nolan film about Oppenheimer, who was the head of the Manhattan Project. And I think it's all been shot in black and white. I might be wrong, but I think that's the stylistic choice that he's made on this one.
Cool.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't really seen a film for quite a while. I've been watching a lot of YouTube, and I would like to, because we'll talk a bit about the Jingle Jam, but before I do that, to shout out a creator that hopefully people are already aware of, but just in case you're not, John Boyce. Does that name ring any bells for you, Dan?
Yeah, it does, but I can't think why.
So he works at, oh gosh, is it Secret Base? They're kind of the same in my head. Basically, he's a sports journalist, but he makes these videos, well, a variety of types of videos, including the series Chart Party, which is basically, if people have seen my recent video on the history of global warming, it's definitely a style influence from John Boyce, because it's sort of like a big 3D, you pan the camera around, you fade stuff in and all that kind of stuff. But his use of music, his construction of the story in three-dimensional space, even though I don't follow any sport really with any level of precision, and I certainly don't follow American sports, I have been hooked on his videos. The storytelling is just that good. So, because it'll be like, trying to think of an example, he did a 2-part really long video on the Bob emergency, which was how the number of professional sports people who go by Bob has been declining over the years, and charting every single athlete called Bob and all their interesting stories, and what sports do they play, what were their accomplishments, what were the records they made, and it's just brilliant. It's honestly one of the best things I've seen on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
I really, really do mean that. So yes, go and check out John Boyce. The thing that I've been spending, as I already said, a lot of my time doing has been preparing for the Jingle Jam, which has finished as of the time of recording, and by pounds raised, I think is the most successful Jingle Jam they've had in the modern era, I want to say.
Brilliant. I have caught some streams live and then certainly highlights. But
yeah, there's just too much to watch.
they're on at a time usually in evenings where if I'm doing any singing or depping or work, then it's that time, which is slightly annoying. But
yeah,
I'm looking forward to watching the full highlights and things.
I mean, there's so much to look forward to. Every year there's Jingle Cats, which I watched live this year, which was great.
Yes,
really,
that was
really
one that I
happy
did
able to
watch
do that.
live, in fairness.
It was a very good year for Jingle. A fine vintage, I thought.
And I'm looking forward to watching poker highlights.
Yes.
I saw the highlights of the University Challenge thing, which was phenomenal, by the way. I hope you're really pleased, because it really was excellent.
Thank you.
Especially dealing with the sort of technical issues,
Well, that's the thing. I was blissfully unaware of the technical issues. The only time I knew something was going wrong at the start. So people don't know, basically. In the room, there was a very complicated setup they had with 3 or 4 cameras, and then mics for the 2 teams and mics for me that were being mixed live. And even though it may not be obvious, BBC doesn't do University Challenge live, and it's for a very good reason, because it's a very complicated setup that keeps breaking. So when we did it live, the issue it was actually astonishingly well timed. The first issue was that there was an echo on my audio, which meant that when I said, "Good, let's get on with it. Here's your first starter for 10." That looped about 100 times whilst we were over the course of the first episode. And it was like a perfect little sample that they managed to get somehow. So the only time I was aware that was happening was when we went to I was like, oh, we're going to take our first picture round now. And then I heard a voice in my ear, because I had an earpiece in, and they're going, don't we can't do that yet. Just move on, Simon, please. And I was like, okay, no, apparently we've got a technical issue. We're just going to carry on.
Yeah.
And just try to brush past it. But yeah, the shout out to Pierre and the tech team at the Yogscast. They're absolute wizards. They are so good at what they do. And Pierre in particular was like a force of nature, doing live mixing of audio and cutting between all these things and between the rounds, like resetting and problem solving. It was really inspirational to watch them work. So I was the on-camera person, but the people behind the scenes were absolute heroes. So shout out to them. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. I wrote close to 600 questions, I think, for the tournament overall, which meant there were a couple of errors that crept in. Sorry. The University Challenge also doesn't have one guy writing all the questions by themselves.
Yes, yeah.
But I think it came off in the end. And even though the teams were a bit unbalanced, I had nothing to do with the team selection. I think everyone in the room seemed to have fun, and the people at home watching seemed to enjoy it. And we raised, I actually don't know how much on the stream itself, but we certainly raised a lot. I mean, the total this year is just shy of £3.5 million, which is absolutely balmy. And I know this is, Lewis has said to me before that this is sort of the Jingle Jam is the reason that he keeps doing YouTube. Like, he will keep making videos on YouTube and running the Twitch channel, all that kind of stuff, so they can do Jingle Jam every year and keep having this enormous positive impact. So long may it continue, I say.
Absolutely.
But the other thing to mention is that just the other day, just this week, fan favourite of the Wikicast and various things that I make, myself and Ed Dunn, Edward Bear Games, went to a gig, Dan.
Oh, wow.
We actually went to a contemporary musical act, and we realised it was the first time for both of us that we'd actually been to a gig that wasn't, a choir or an orchestra or something, because we went to see The Longest Johns.
Oh, how was that?
It was really fun. Really, really excellent night. Admittedly, we both had a few drinks, which I think added up. I feel like, for those of you that don't know, The Longest Johns are a sea shanty group, right? And I feel like that's how you're supposed to consume sea shanties. You're supposed to have a bit of lubrication in you, right? Like that
Yes.
just adds to the experience.
Absolutely.
And fittingly enough, the gig was actually on a boat called Thekla in Bristol, which is a club that was normally a nightclub that I never thought I would go to, because it was like the cool kids club when I was a kid. And I was just like, well, obviously that's not me. I'm never going to go there. But yeah, really, really enjoyable gig. Went there with some of the Yogs. The Longest Johns invited us to go and had us on the guest list, which meant I had such a high and low within a course of about 5 seconds, because with Ed in tow, I walked up to the guy on the front desk and I was like, hi, I'm on the guest list, apparently. I'm Simon. And he looked at the list and went, no, you're not. I was like, oh, for once in my life, I thought I was going to be really cool. It turned out they had the wrong guest list, because I just had to show them like the DMs with the band. They're like, yeah, all right, fine.
Yeah.
But I was just like, oh, come on, give me this.
That's a shame.
But yes, just to round out that story, had a great time at the gig. If people don't listen to The Longest Johns, you absolutely should. They were my most listened to artist on Spotify last year. Can you remember what yours was off the top of your head?
Well, no, because I don't use Spotify.
Oh, of course, yeah, you have Apple Music.
I'm an Apple Music man, yeah.
So yeah, they were my top artist, and that's obviously amazing to be able to sing along live to all the songs that you know very well.
Yeah.
Just as a coda to that story, Ed and I had such a good time, and the singing was so good that we don't remember bits of the journey back home. But what we do remember is that, because there's video evidence of it, we spent, I'm not actually sure how long, but quite some time on one of the roads back from the train station to my house. It's currently snowing, and there were loads of cars covered with snow once we went out. We just went up the road and wrote "You Are Loved" on the roof of every single car on that road.
Well, that's nice.
It's nice, but in retrospect, I have no clue why we felt the need to do it. Like, it was freezing. We
Yes.
wanted to go back home. We were like, yeah, no, this is more important.
Yeah.
It's more important that people know this.
Well, I'm sure people would have appreciated it, provided that it didn't snow so heavily that by the time they get up, they won't be able to see it.
Yeah, or I realised this in retrospect. Have we actually just, because I was using my thumb to etch the message in, have I just scratched the roof of all these people's cars?
Yeah, and your spelling had really gone to pot as well, so it's actually just like "you are bum" or something instead of on every single car.
Still all these confused people, and you can probably track the spelling getting worse as you go along the road.
"You are bum," smiley face, kiss, kiss.
It's just my phone number. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Top lad.
Brummy Mike.
Good writings.
Good ideas.
I've realised that's the key to the because it's Peaky Blinders are Brummie, aren't they?
Yes.
So now whenever I see one of their memes, I struggle to do a Brummie accent. But now when I see, the no fighting meme, I'm just like, oh, greetings. Oh, where the f*** have you been? No fighting.
Love it. And we find ourselves again in that most festive of podcast corners, Patreon. Patreon Corner is an opportunity for us to say an enormous thank you to those who support us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/the Wikicast. And without your guys' incredible support, this podcast couldn't exist. We wouldn't be able to pay our marvellous, wonderful editor Fergus. We wouldn't be able to pay for hosting. So Simon and I would just be sat here recording podcasts and effectively sort of getting to the end of an episode and then simply deleting the episode, which alarmingly has happened before, not intentionally, but as far as technical difficulties, you may, long-time readers of the podcast may remember my old laptop that would insist on trying to take off as soon as I turned it on, which wasn't ideal.
It was like that scene in Mary Poppins where you have the sort of the dinner party on the ceiling. It was just Dan trying to kind of grab hold with both hands of his laptop with the cable trailing as he was lifted towards the ceiling.
That or sort of think fizzy lifting drinks from,
Oh, yes.
From the,
Dan, you got a burp! You got a burp, Dan! You're going up into the fan!
Oh god, what a petrifying film of cinematic.
It's a horrifying scene.
It's a really horrifying thing.
It's actually horrifying. But yes, basically, Patreon, good. We love you all. Thank you very much. And to say thank you, we would like to thank some special people. I would like to thank the people who have correctly joined the top cat tier, saying that the cats are the best animal. I would actually introduce Susie, my cat, to the podcast at this point, but she did jump off my lap almost as soon as Dan started talking. Strange coincidence. Wow. But she could sense that you were a filthy dog, top dog. Whereas I would like to thank some wonderful people, including Anna Reifer, Jean-Claude Marais, Nathan Flaherty, Abu El Ella, the physics boy, Simon P, Jack Easton, Izzy CC, Nafi Iftikhar, Christopher Betterton, Dame Valerie III, Layla Marina, Will Janice Humphreys, Rents Kirk, Oliver Burkhart, Omar Miranda, Colm Mansfield, Isabel Ostrowski, and the one and the only Dan Hanvey.
And I would like to say an enormous thank you to those who support at top dog tier, the truly supreme pet of choice. So thank you to Jay Wright, Ben McMurtry, Peter Reed, Kodzo, Colin J. Brown, Alistair Fortune, Lexi at Front Desk, Hasse Hansen, Henry VII, King of England and of France, Lord of Ireland, Aaron Jorgensen, Naflarok, Andrian with an Anne Chan, Ben Caples, Martin Narciso, Christian from the Alps, Amy Bonney, Lexi at Front Desk's boss, Carl Waldrot, and Brummy Mike.
Greetings.
Thanks so much.
Actually, which Henry, King of England, Lord of Ireland, is it? Is there a number in the King?
7th.
Okay. Because at that point... So the only reason I ask is because I just read an excellent book called The Hollow Crown, which was about the Wars of the Roses. And I think Henry VII...
Just so you know, I suddenly had that feeling of stepping out into traffic when you read out the title of the book, because it made me think of the Hollow Pod fanfiction that we had to change the title of the name... the thing too.
Oh god!
Just read an excellent book called The Hollow Crown. Oh, it's
no. It's just because I think Henry VII. I can't remember how much of France England still controlled at that point, but like a key point of the book is that Henry VI had the whole thing was I am King of England and of France. Look, I have a tapestry to prove it. Mm-hmm. So I was wondering if it was him, but turns out Henry VI, terrible king. Basically the reason that we had all the political instability in the 15th century. Fascinating book. Everyone should read it. Just saying. Mm-hmm. Anyway, let's move on. Top lad. And we've moved on to Correspondence Corner. I genuinely had to think then, Dan. I think my brain... I feel like Hal at the end of 2001 at the moment. This illness is pulling out the little... there's a little gremlin in my brain that's got a tiny screwdriver and it's pulling out my memory cores and my faculties.
Daisy, give me your answer do.
I can feel it, Dan. Again, a scene that I thought was genuinely beautiful when I was a kid, and I look back now, and it is one of the most horrifying deaths in all of cinema. If people haven't seen 2001, I feel like it's a bit of a Marmite film. I would, for example, never show it to Pixel Wife because I simply don't think she would have the patience or get it, and that's fine. Like, it's not for everyone, but I feel like if you're on the fence about maybe seeing it, do, because it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it really is.
And that scene is legitimately awful. There's two death scenes in there. There's the people in the pods, and then there's Hal, and Ugh, chilling. Anyway,
Yeah.
yes, we're in Correspondence Corner, and we've got some emails to read out. I would like to read out an email here from Bengig with new dynamic unit of measurement. It reads as follows. Good morning, fellows. In response to my reading of your latest instalment, I heard your call for suggestions of a new dynamic unit of time now that Queen Elizabeth II has become static, RSVP, and King Prince Charles is too logical a step.
RSVP.
People thought that I did that by mistake during the Ox quiz. I was like, there's no way.
That's funny. I like that. That's good.
That's greatest generationism. I've just thoroughly adopted it into my vocabulary now.
RSVP. So sorry for your loss, RSVP.
It's gonna slip out. Genuinely, It's gonna slip out at some point when it's. Oh god, that.
It's like it's like the Sipsian rip in peace.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is great. Which is really great.
But so yes, RSVP Queen Elizabeth. Ben is such a. May I humbly suggest?
Sorry, it's really got me, that one. That's really got me.
You're going to start using it now. I can't wait to catch you with that.
100%. I absolutely will.
Ben suggests, may I humbly suggest that we go to the opposite end of the family and measure our time in Prince Louis.
Oh yeah, Prince Louis.
How old is the Prince Louis? The Prince Louis, I mean. Is that the youngest? He's 4.
Right.
He is the third and youngest child of William and Kate. Okay, so Ben signs off by saying, yours wirelessly, Ben, age 25 and 22 over 24, excellent fraction, or 5.655 Prince Louis.
Nice.
I really like that unit of measurement, Dan. I think it is exactly the kind of anti-logic that this podcast specialises in and needs.
Absolutely. And the fact that he's only 4 means that it's going to be quite easy. It's going to be a more satisfying calculation.
Yeah, and it's going to change much more quickly. It's a very mutable unit at this point.
Indeed.
So thumbs up. I think, can we put both of our keys into the nuclear launch codes and confirm that that is our new dynamic unit of time?
I'm sure we can do that.
I can confirm the code is authentic. We are now measuring time in Prince Louis.
I'm just lifting up the little sort of Pyrex cube that sits above the button.
Yeah. That's a podcast that I listened to recently that reminded me how good the film was. Crimson Tide. If people haven't watched Crimson Tide, it's a Tony Scott film. It's the same guy that directed Top Gun. It's so over the top, and it's got Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington acting the shit out of each other. Great film. Really, really great film.
Love it. We have an email here from Bartosz. I apologise if I've butchered that, quite possibly. And they write, Dear Messrs Clark and Moore, I've just opened my Spotify Unwrapped and I've spent 55 hours listening to your podcast in 2022.
What?
I don't regret this, but it does make me think I need better hobbies. Assuming each episode is an hour long, I am 187,830.53 Wikicast episodes old. Regards, Bartosz. P.S. Oh, and go dogs.
Wrong. Just incorrect. I mean, the fact that you've listened to this podcast for 55 hours this year indicates that, of course, you have terrible taste.
Yes, well.
Yeah, I had a few people tag me on Instagram with their Unwrapped, and that is nuts to me that there are people for whom, we are a significant part of their listening experience. And I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that we're not better at this.
Yeah, I too received quite a few things on Instagram of people tagging us, and I just thought, gosh, well, my first thought was, wow, we're so lucky to have an amazing readership like you all. And then my second thought was, oh my gosh, what have we inflicted on humanity?
Everyone's gonna be saying RSVP now.
Then my third thought was like, I'm gonna make a cup of tea. Then my fourth thought was
the first thought was my perfect Sunday would be
no, my perfect Sunday.
Oh god, maybe that's a comfort film I could watch whilst I'm feeling rotten, actually.
Well, yeah, you absolutely should. If you want to go and be a big cop in a small town, go and
off down to Model Village.
That's it, yeah. That's the one. Love it.
Full Hot Fuzz is the West Country's national film. It's so full of it's just every line almost is a meme. It's just so good.
You'll have to catch me. I'm a slasher. of prices.
Yeah. This episode has been bad for my health.
Yes, on that bombshell, I think we'll have to retire because Simon is going to explode.
My one last act before I pass out into a haze of mensip. Oh my god, lemsip.
What did you say?
I said mensip. What the It's either really smart lemsip or it's like the only for men variety.
Mensip. I'm a member of Mensip. Are you having a stroke, Simon?
This cold is 200 IQ. Oh my god. I was going to say... Oh god. I was going to say, before we go, if people aren't aware, I play D&D every week on Twitch, and it's on the. I'll leave a link in the show notes on the Twitch channel RP Geeks D&D. As of the time of recording, we're actually about to go into our final episode of our over a year-long campaign, which is very, very exciting. But the reason I want to bring it up is because on, I think it's the 21st, it's not very far away now, of December, we are broadcasting our Christmas special, which I was the DM for. And I had a whale of a time. It was really, really fun running it, and the players really enjoyed it. We had a few firsts of all of the times that we played D&D. We had a couple of firsts in that session. If people like the idea of a silly, fun, light Christmas one-shot run by me, please do oh my god, please do go check out RP Geeks D&D. Stop, you're not helping.
It was the fact that you preceded all of that with please.
Please put me out of my misery. So go and check it out, and if this episode comes out after it's gone live, then I'll put a link to the YouTube video of it. But yeah, just a bit of advertising there. It should be really, really fun. We had a great time making it, so do go check that out.
Amazing. So, Simon, what have we learnt today?
Today, Dan, we actually learned a surprising amount about Father Christmas.
In all seriousness, we did actually learn quite a bit.
One of the more educational episodes of the Wikicast, which isn't saying much, but it's saying something.
Yes.
We talked about what we've been up to for the past kind of month or two. I talked about my first gig. You've been talking about all of your singing.
For a change.
Yeah, it's a first for the podcast. I revealed I was a member of Lempsa, Mensip. What the
Men's Lip.
Mensip.
Yeah. Simon's a member of Men's Lip. We had a really marvellous choral piece of the week by Cecilia McDowell of A Rose, which is very good. I gave a fairly long-winded sort of blustering thought for the day on Avatar 2. Yeah, and then we also mentioned how, at what point do you start getting sick of Christmas carols? And the answer is a week ago.
And that is the point. I suppose we haven't actually said it yet this episode, but Merry Chrysler, everyone.
Yeah, happy Crimbus, and happy non-religious denominational holiday to those who are. Just have a good holiday. Have an amazing time.
Yeah. You don't have to be religious at all to enjoy this holiday. Just go with the crowd and enjoy having some festivities.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hope you enjoy. Merry Christmas.
Happy Kramer. And that's all for this Christmassy episode. Don't forget to subscribe to us on your podcasting service of choice, join the Discord, and if you'd like to see our faces, check out our YouTube channel, Spongy and Electric.
Reviews of Avatar 2, reports of what you got up to over Christmas, and other thoughts on the show can be sent to us at spongyelectric@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
Join us again for another tumble down the wiki rabbit hole, and we'll see you next time.
RSVP me.
RSVP. Hey Simon. See you next year.
Whoa! Oh god. Oh, just getting sick of that already.
Yep. Love that.